Whew, so you got a sense of a threat from the military companies. You got a sense of the threat from the paparazzi. Was it ever a sense of threat from the royal family?
No, no, we didn't know. And I know people have, kind of said that, but no, not at all. But interestingly, we knew we were being watched. We were being watched in the UK. We had MI5 on us, and we had other people doing surveillance on us. And from time to time, we'd catch them and we'd just knock on the car door and say, "Do you want to brew, lads?" or something like that. And they'd be like, "Ugh," and off they go. But don't forget, we had surveillance experts on the team as well, former MI5, former specialist people as well from the military. So we had our own anti-surveillance and counter-surveillance drills. So we knew we were being watched out there. And that time when I told you where we blocked the road off, the Paps were quite a way behind on their little scooters. But there was about 4 or 5... maybe 2 or 3 or 4 high-powered bikes, which were not normal. And these people got off the bikes, these guys, and came to us. And they spoke to us in military terms, like, "Lads, are you going to let us through? You're right, mucker, are you going to let us through?" And we said, "Lads, you know we can't." And they went, you're not going to." I said, we're not moving. And they went, "Yeah, okay, cheers, fair do, lads." Got on their bikes, and off they went. Then the Paps came, and they were like pushing and shoving and really being aggressive and swearing and everything. But when they realised we weren't going to move, after about 5 minutes, off they went. So the first guys that we met were ex-military. Simple as that. What they were doing there, I don't know. But what we assume they were doing is they were watching the princess and what was going on. And it makes sense, and we actually like that we had some people there that were kind of giving us some cover. Really, if anything happened, we knew that the government would know it was happening. So we didn't have a problem with this at all. And later, when I gave evidence in the coroner's inquiry, one of the barristers who were working for either the royal family or there's so many barristers there. He gave me a really hard time about this. And he was, I'll describe him to you, shall I? He was short, balding, nothing wrong with that, brother, with like patches of hair here sticking out, and quite overweight, right? So he gives me a really hard time about this, and the judges sat there. Was it Lord? I can't remember, Lord Stevens or something like that. And I'm here for about an hour and a half, by the way, being cross-examined by all these top barristers. And he's saying to me, "Oh, Lee," oh, no, "Mr. Sansum, I put it to you." And I went, "I hope you don't, mate." But he said, "I put it to you." And he starts telling me this. "So what you're describing is somebody in certain type of shoes, chinos, this type of shirt, and just purely by what they're wearing, you can tell me if they're ex-military or not." And I said, "Well, also their demeanour and the words they spoke to me, I can tell you now 100% they were ex-military." And I just really give it to him. There's nowhere to go then. So he comes up with this funny quip and he says, "Mr. Sansum, something like, if I was to ever see you when I was on holiday dressed like that, I would really be concerned that you thought I was ex-military." And I said, "I would never think you were ex-military, no matter what you wore." And everybody starts sniggering. And then the judge, he's got a smile, and he says, "Right, we can stop this line of questioning now." I thought, what are you on, mate? Come on. Well,
so Lee, with hindsight, then, I've read the book Diana in Her Own Words, and she talks about a threat from Charles and the possibility of it being made to look like a car crash if she died. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
And this is the thing. How can I say? If you feel something really deeply inside you, it's obviously that feeling has come by what you've seen, what you've witnessed and what you've done. So I don't know her life, but she knew she had trackers on her vehicles. That could have been the press, as we're finding out now. She knew her phone was being listened to, and we know now what's going on with that piece. But she did have certain fears, but also the things that she's seen in that position that we will never see. We will never understand what goes on at that level. So whatever it was made her concerned. And I know when her friend Versace died, and it looked like it was an execution by the way it was done. So, following that, we found it wasn't. It was something else. But I bumped into her on the ship, on the front of the ship, with massive glass windows, and I was looking for something, and she turned around. She's obviously been crying. She was really upset, and she said, "Have you heard about my friend Versace?" And I said, "Yeah, how?" I said, "It's really awful. It's horrible." And she said, "What do you think's happened?" And I just said, "It just looks like it's, it's been a hit, and nobody knows. It's breaking news and all the rest of it." She was crying, and she said to me, "Lee, do you think they will do that to me?" And the way she said it and the context she said it in, I knew it was aimed at either the royal family or the government. And at that moment, in somebody's moment of need and grief and desperation, that was how she felt. And I was like, whoa, this is one, I've got to get out of here, because she came very close to me. She just wanted a hug, and I wanted to hug her. When somebody's so upset, but you imagine if the paparazzi would have caught that on camera. My God, one, I'd have been out of a job. Two, I would have been very embarrassed for compromising her. And can you imagine the stories they would write about that? So I kind of backed off and legged it off there, feeling, just as a human being, thinking I really wanted to comfort her then, but I couldn't. And quite right. And I thought, what a desperate place that woman's in,
Did anybody else around her die mysteriously?
I've not researched it. I've been very tempted to, Sean. I don't want it to get it into my head, but I do know people that are involved in the inquiry have mysteriously died. Now, whether that's, I don't know. I don't look into these things like that, Sean, but I do know, I do have conspiracy theorists asking me to get involved in it, and I just don't want to go down that route, because I know if I do, it'll take over my head, so I just don't look into that side of things,
What was your last conversation with her?
The last time I spoke to her, I jumped off the top of the ship in the harbour. We were taking them back to get on the aircraft, and we were on the top of the deck, the security team, and Harry and some of the other children was with us. And he said to me, "Lee, would you jump off the top of the ship?" And I said, "Dare you?" Well, somebody says dare you, you're going to say yeah, aren't you? So I said, "Yeah, of course I will." And he said, "It's dark." And he said, "It's a long way, Lee." And I said, "Of course it is." He said, "Well, do it then." I said, "I'm not going to jump off the top. I've got my kit on. I'm taking you to the aircraft. I can't go dripping wet over to the aircraft with, you and your mum and that." And he said, "Oh, so you daren't then?" I said, "Yes. Listen, I dare, but I'm not going to do it. All right, off you go." So he runs off, squealing with laughter with all the other kids. And then I hear this, Lee, and I look down, it's the princess right on the bottom. They're having dinner, the adults, while the kids were hanging out. She said, "Harry says you're going to jump off the boat, off the ship." And I said, "Well, it's not exactly like that." She said, "Yes, he said you do it for 200 quid. And I said, "Well, I did say that." And then I saw Mr. Fired look up. He said, "Lee, there's 200 quid, jump." So I jumped off the top of this bloody ship. And then I come back on, swim back up and come back up. And she's there shrieking with laughter and talking, shouting at me and all this. And off I go. And that's the last time I spoke to her.
So what other interactions did you have with her kids?
The way I could best describe it really is, let's say you're taking your kids on holiday and you had every toy you wanted to play with. It was like that. There was times where, we had such a big team, but if I was involved in the kids, we'd always have people watching, you see. So I could just entertain the kids and be their, like, safety person there, because we were on the sea and stuff. So, I taught them to ride the jet bikes, the jet skis, squirt the paparazzi with a big thing of water coming out the back. And we'd sit there and chat. I was doing some kickboxing we had a small gym there, and I got the princes there and tell them what, because they used to like martial arts. So just doing cool stuff with them. It was really, really, it was a great job.
Did you have any inkling from the young personalities that things would turn out as they have for William and Harry?
Kind of, looking back, yeah. Prince William was really measured, lovely kid, really pleasant, polite boy, intelligent and just a nice kid. Harry was a naughty boy and full of life and fun, and I just loved the way he was. It reminded me a lot of my son, so they were like chalk and cheese. But you could see they were like really looked after each other. They had that really good bond, So it's so sad to see what's happened now. Really sad. So those two little boys that I knew then, I can see what's happened and why it's happened,
Did you know anything about the death of Barry Manicky?
No.
Okay. So when the news broke about Diana's death, where were you and how did you react to that?
So I was at home. I just had a family barbecue. I lived on my own, and I was doing all the washing up. Right, I never did that. I waited till the next day. I'm a next day man, me, especially when you're partying, And it came on Sky News that this had happened. I was like, what? So instantly I went to my phone and I had a few missed calls from our operations room, our ops room in London. So I was then on to the ops room finding out what had happened. And to be quite honest, the first person I was thinking about was Trevor Rees-Jones, a very good friend of mine. And we still speak now, he's a great guy. And then, I was listening to what was happening real time. So I was ahead of, everybody else in the world. So I knew when she died, and I knew that Dodie and the driver, Honey Paul, was dead. With Trevor, eventually, obviously, we found out, he was pulling through and all the rest of it. But it was a real shock, and Dodie as well. I've been around the family for years, so I knew the grief and everything that was going to go out. It was a really sad time. And then when I got back to work, maybe a week later, it was like walking into someone's house whose son had died. It was horrible. And I really felt for the family and all the stuff that was going on in the news, the paps about the princess and that, and some of the stuff wasn't that kind. And I'm thinking, this family just lost a son. Does anybody out there really understand this? So it was a really sad time. And also their house, the flowers that were left outside. You've seen it all on the television. We had to take them in at night. It was just too many, almost blocking the road. It was just an incredible time in the world. And that national outpouring of grief that it's the first and only ever, well, they might have had it subsequently, but it's the first time the British public had ever behaved like that. I remember it now, and nobody could understand this massive outpouring of grief worldwide from a woman they had never met.
Yeah, she was, like you said, the most famous woman in the world.